We're holding in the middle of the series, the 70 most difficult questions in Judaism. And we went on to a mini-series that has to do with soulmates. After all, we described the creation of the human being, the various parts of him, the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. We spoke about his capability in the area of free will. And then we went on to predestination, the mazal. And one of the aspects of one's mazal is also who he marries. It's a package deal. However, in the area of zivugim, in the area of marriage, there is one big difference, and that is that Kadosh Baruch Hu b'chvodo b'atzmo mashgiach. He himself supervises. Only he knows which souls go together. And therefore, it's his department exclusively. And obviously, since this is a very important topic to many of us, those of you who are single and those of you who are married, I decided to elaborate a little bit more on this subject. And we started off talking about the question, what is a zivug? What is a soulmate exactly? Then we went on to explain why there's so many singles today. And today we're holding on another very important topic, and that is how to identify. How do you recognize who your soulmate is? Whether you are still single, or even if you are married, did you make the right decision? And B'ezrat Hashem next week, actually next week is already Hanukkah, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about Hanukkah, but then we're going to go on to the next subject, segulot, various segulot and tefillot on how to make it happen smoothly. And there's so many ideas and so many tips that I can give you that I had to separate it. I could not include that all tonight. So B'ezrat Hashem, I think we can do that at a separate time. And the last week of this mini-series will be about how to stay married. A lot of people succeed in finding their soulmate, or somebody close to their soulmate, somebody that they can get along, but they do not succeed in holding on to the marriage for too long. So some ideas on how to stay married. That will be another week. So tonight we're going to talk about how to identify the soulmate, plus some tips on dating. In order to have a smooth transition from being single to married, it is important to keep in mind certain things. So we'll hopefully talk about them tonight. Soulmates is something very, very important to all of us because we all can identify with what soulmate means. It means the best choice, the most compatible, the most perfect match that can be. I think most of us somehow identify with that concept. That is how we relate to soulmates. It is something very important to most human beings, that they be with the right person, with the best person possible. And what happens when they are dating with the intent of getting married is that they have a hard time. Many people have a hard time making up their mind. It does not go easy for them. It's not smooth. And the reason for that, the simple reason, is because it's a major decision in one's life. You're hopefully going to marry someone that you're going to be with her, with him for the rest of your life. And you would also want that person to be your best friend if possible, right? Wouldn't it be nice that the person you marry, the mother of your children, the father of your kids, is also your best friend? It would be nice that they have all the good characters and good values that you've dreamt of, that you have on your wish list. And because of that, we're not always happy with our dates. We're not always satisfied with the people that we're set up with. They don't match the criteria that we're looking for. And when it begins to get a little bit better, we have a hard time deciding and we hesitate. And why do we hesitate? Because it's an important decision. So it's okay. It's okay. It's completely acceptable and normal for a person to hesitate and to have certain doubts. However, we must remember that the rabbis tell us that the entire hishtadlut that we make in dating, hishtadlut means the effort of going out and meeting, ze'efes, it is zero compared to a Kadosh Baruch Hu's job of making it happen. He's going to make it happen. It's his department. He has a vested interest in a couple, building a home, having children, having a family. He has a very, very much a vested interest in this. He wants to be a partner in a Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. He wants to build a home together with us, with every couple. Therefore, as I explained last week, he makes it happen one way or another. So our hishtadlut, even though it's important, we don't sit back and do nothing. We must remember that in reality, the bottom line will be that all our efforts and the efforts of our friends and family members will be efforts, will be zero compared to his act and his timing and however he chooses it to happen. Nevertheless, we need to go out. We need to make an ishtadlut, to meet people, to talk to them. And it sometimes becomes very difficult. Part of the difficulty has to do with the confusion. Many men and women are confused because they don't have the clarity that is needed to be able to make a decision, a mature decision, a responsible decision. And the reason why they don't have the clarity is because they were not told, they have not learned what they should be looking for, what is it that they should want. So they may have their own ideas that they may have seen or heard on TV of what romance is and what it should look like. And they may, of course, be the wrong ideas. So people are confused. Many, many singles out there are confused as to what they really should be looking for, what it is that exactly that they should want. So I need to give you a few ideas, a little bit of an introduction to this whole game, if we can call it, of dating, because it's a game. In the end, hopefully, if you meet the right person, you'll forget about everything that has transpired. But in the meantime, you have to play this game. One of the rules of the game is that nobody ever gets 100%. Nobody is perfect. No human being is perfect. So don't expect to get 100% of what you're looking for. And by the way, since you're not living with the person yet, it is impossible for you to be 100% convinced that this is he or she. So there is no 100%, not in being convinced and not in meeting the person who you always wanted for, who you always were looking for, that it has exactly everything that you were looking for. Every little detail. The right height, the right color of the eyes, the right weight, the right age difference, the right amount of money that he or she should have. Just everything. Some people have a long list. It's impossible. You will not get 100% of what you want. And you know why? Why not get 100%? Because what Hashem has in store for us is what we need and not what we want. Very simple. And that is one of the mistakes that most people make, and that contributes to their difficulty in making a decision, is that they go with an idea of what they want. Hashem knows what you need. The true zivug, the true soulmate, is what one needs, not what one wants. Many times, of course, what we want is what we need. People who know themselves very well, they know more or less what they need. But not everybody has this clarity. And that is why some people, I should say many people, are confused. They're looking for certain things that they want, but the zivug is what you need. And only Hashem knows that. Now what happens if somebody got married and he feels, wow, I made a terrible mistake? And this mistake could be after the Sheva Brachot, after 7 days. This mistake that he feels he made could be after a month, after a year, after 5 years. He feels terribly disappointed and bitter. Do you think he married the wrong person, that he really made a mistake? It is possible. It is possible, sure. We spoke about it last week, that there are people that end up getting married to those that they wanted, not to those that they needed. And it turns out that these people are not kind. These people have some other problem. And why did Hashem allow that to happen? Because of our ma'asim, or of our deeds. If a person does not behave himself, does not do things properly, it is possible that he will not get the best match. It is possible. Or if he's picky, very picky, he may be getting himself into a big trap. And he may be very disappointed. But let me tell you a big chidush. And I mentioned a little bit, I spoke a little bit about it a couple weeks ago. Even those who have a disastrous marriage, a difficult marriage. The man married an isha kasha, a difficult woman. The woman married a difficult man. You know that sometimes that is the zivug? Because when we explained and defined what zivug means, we said that it is possible that the zivug, which is the match, is a woman that Hashem designated, not necessarily the true soulmate. Zivugim means also what Hashem designated. This is an important point because when somebody is 50 or over, and he's already had his life and kids with his real zivug, and now he's marrying again, he's not going to marry necessarily his other soulmate. He may just be marrying a woman who he gets along with very nicely. And that woman, Hashem also designated for him. Even though this is the second time and the third time he gets married, every one of those matches Hashem designates. Are they his true soulmate? No, but there is zivug. It is possible for a man to marry a zivug, a woman that was designated to him, and she's going to be a very difficult woman. Many tzaddikim and chachamim in the Gemara, throughout the history, have had this kind of a life, this kind of an experience, that they married a difficult woman. And you sometimes wonder, how could this tzaddik end up with such a witch? How could it be? And the biggest chidush, the biggest question is, why did he continue to live with her? Why didn't he just divorce her? Some did. Some just couldn't take it, and they divorced the woman. Some just went along. There was one rabbi in the Gemara who surprised even his own children. Daddy, why do you always buy mommy a gift? You don't like her. Every time you go on a trip, you always think of her. You go to the duty-free. There was no duty-free back then, but goes to the shop and you buy her something before you come home. And the father, of course, gave the son very valuable lessons on seeing the good in everybody and not focusing on the negative. Everybody has some good, as we spoke about it many times. Dayenu shemegadot et banenu umatzilot otanu min hachet. This woman, your mother, even though she may not be kind to me, she doesn't cook me my favorite food, she always opposes me, but at least she takes good care of my kids, and she protects me from sin. At least I have that. Some men, some tzaddikim, were willing to live with the challenges of a difficult woman. And the other way around, some women were really courageous in their struggle, their daily struggle with their difficult men. They chose not to divorce. But why? It is brought down that every challenge that we have, every nisayon, is for our growth. There's always some benefit from it. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba betrunya in biryotav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu never gives us a challenge that we cannot handle. Ulefi gamla shahna. And according to the camel, that is how much the load will be. The stronger the camel, the more the load they will put on him. In other words, Hashem knows exactly what He's doing, and it's very possible that that is the tikkun of this individual. By having this woman, he will grow to tremendous heights. He will be able to grow spiritually, only because of that difficult woman, because of that difficult challenge. So who are we to complain that somebody, Chas Shalom, has a difficult wife? It could be, that's his nisayon, that's his tikkun, and it's for his good. Can he divorce her? Should he? That's up to him. Depends on the circumstances. Some have chosen yes, and some have chosen not. But this is also zivug, this is also nashamai. He did not make a mistake. He's a chacham, he's a tzaddik. They don't make mistakes. He was not choosy, he was not picky, he did it l'shem shamayim. It's a tikkun, that's all it is. Is it his soulmate? No. I'm going to tell you what a soulmate is a little bit later, a real soulmate. But is it a zivug, nashamayim, designated for him? Of course it is. It's all nashamayim. If someone is therefore a good individual, his maasim are fine, he behaves himself, he doesn't have to worry too much. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interested in people getting married to the best possible match. And if one lives with this bitachon, B'ezrat Hashem, when the right time comes, he will find her or him. He has no reason to doubt, no reason to fear. The Kabbalists of this generation did point out, however, that this is a generation of tikkunim. Tikkunim meaning that this is right before Mashiach arrives. There are a lot of individuals who are here for the second, third, fourth, or fifth time, or even more, in a reincarnated form, Gilgul, and therefore they have to go through tikkunim, through difficult situations, and they don't necessarily end up marrying their first date, the first girl or the first boy that they meet. It may take longer than it used to take in the past. Why? Generation of tikkunim. Well, however, from time to time, we read or we hear an encouraging story, a fascinating story of Ashgaha Pratit, of divine providence, of incredible Ashgaha, of how this girl met the boy. I'm sure many of you perhaps have read a story or two of incredible how the two met out of nowhere. There's so many stories, and I encourage you to read them. Incredible stories of how the two met out of nowhere, and they lived happily ever after. Perfect match. And how did they meet? All min hashamayim. As I told you, he's from New Zealand, and she's from Alaska, and they met in Jamaica. They were both on a cruise. Everything is possible. He can do it. Every one of these stories that shows tremendous ashgaha is encouraging. It reminds us, if that story can happen, it happens then all the time, it's just we're not aware of it. Not everyone has an incredible story to tell. Some are very simple. Some are very easy. Some of them are very common sense. Oh, the two were neighbors. They grew up together. What's the big deal? But there's always Ashgaha Pratit. But it's nice to hear the stories because they give us strength and encouragement that Kadosh Baruch Hu is still behind the scenes. Speaking a little bit about true zivugim and true soulmates, I have to remind you, for those of you who were not here a couple weeks ago, the real zivug is not a woman or a man that is prohibited to us. It cannot be a goya. It cannot be a non-Jewish woman. It cannot be a non-Jewish man. The real soulmate is always the Oto Shoresh HaNeshama, from the same root of the soul. It's not possible that he or she will be someone that is not compatible, completely incompatible, non-Jewish. Nothing against somebody who's non-Jewish, but he has a non-Jewish soulmate. That's all. What about converts? Now that's a very sensitive topic, especially for those who married one. But I have to be very clear. A convert is not your soulmate either. She or he was non-Jewish at one time. And 40 Yom Kodem Yetzirat Avad, 40 days before the formation of the fetus, it has already been determined. Bat Ploni, the daughter of so-and-so, and he's Jewish, is for him, from the same root of the soul. But converts are very much welcome, and we embrace them, and we treat them as our own. We do not discriminate. Unless you're a Kohen, you can't get married to one. Greatest convert of all in our history, Ruth HaMoaviyah, from which David HaMelech came from. So we have nothing against them. On the contrary, they're very special people. But they're not the soulmates of a Jew. And the Jew that eventually marries them, that match came about from heaven too. Because as we said before, Hashem is a veg zivugim, and He designates that convert for this man. But why would He designate that convert for this man if that's not his soulmate? Because that man is 52 years old, and he's never gotten married. He lost his true soulmate, and now the best possible match is a convert. Go ahead. If you like her, you get along with her, you find in her the right midot. The only thing is that she's a convert, so what? You can have a beautiful, good life and get along just fine with a true convert, not a reform convert, not a conservative convert, a convert that was converted through orthodox methods, which means what? All Malchut Shamayim, all Torah mitzvot. She accepted the yoke of heaven. She wants to fulfill mitzvot, and she did not convert because she fell in love with someone. Card. Right? She did it for the real reasons. Then, that's commendable. And Hashem will for sure take care of her or him, who's the convert, and find him and designate him the best possible zivug. Where is Hashem going to take the zivugim for the convert? Hashem has a pool. Remember? He has a pool of extra zivugim. Who's in that pool? Divorcees widows, or men and women who were simply very picky when they were young, and they could not find their soulmates, and now they're in their 40s, and they're available. She says, okay, I could use you. Or somebody else who chose somebody that was not his soulmate because of her looks and her money. In the meantime, she's not married, or he's not married. He or she's in that pool from which Hashem draws to give this man or this woman who's a convert the best possible match from the pool. So there's no shortage of zibugim. Now, even though I gave an example of a convert, it is sometimes possible that one is going to marry a woman or a man that is totally unlikely. Totally, nobody would have thought of it. And I shared with you the story of the Rashash, how the daughter of this big rabbi married the son of a tailor that nobody would have thought of. You have to be open-minded. It has to make a little bit of sense. The two have to like each other, of course. But just because the two are in a different status, one is wealthy, one is poor, that should not be a drawback. You never know. Usually we try to set up people that are more or less alike. And I'm going to talk about that soon. What does it mean, more or less alike? But it is possible, especially as the time progresses and people do not find what they were looking for. Maybe your soulmate is not exactly what you were looking for. Maybe you should be open-minded. Maybe you should be willing to marry somebody below your status. Gemara said so. Hud darga unsid iteta. Or hid darga unsid iteta, I should say. Go down one level. Go down. Go down below your status and marry a woman. In other words, don't remain single for too long, even if you have to marry below your status. Rabbi Mordechai Shar'abi, the Rashash, not the one that passed away in 1984, but the holy Rashash, from which there is a Sidur, a big Kabbalist, had a Yemenite Jewish servant. She was his maid. This is how the story goes, more or less. Every time that he would sit down and learn Torah, she would bring him tea. One day she brought him 2 cups of tea. She says, why did you bring me 2 cups of tea? I brought you one, and for the man who's sitting next to you. Oh, you were able to see the man that was sitting next to me? It was Eliyahu Navi. Azat reuyali. Then you are worthy of marrying me. Obviously, not everybody's able to see Eliyahu Navi. A maid, a Yemenite poor girl, probably an orphan. And there was somewhat of an age difference between them too. But he understood that was for him a siman min hashamayim. And this is very important, because even though we do not know who our true zivug is initially, there are simanim, there are itutim, there are signals. You bump into each other, you see him or her in your dream a lot. It could be. It's possible that these are simanim. You're not going to base your decision on that, but it helps when there are signs, when you pick up on the signs. Just too much of a coincidence. Things are just going always right, and 3 people suggested it to me. This always keeps coming back. There could be some signs, some itutim in Hashemayim that will help us make the decision. So you have to be open-minded. You really have to be open that sometimes the zivug can turn out to be something that you did not expect. What about age? Age difference. 5 years, 10 years apart, 15, 20, 25, 30, how about 40 years apart? Rabbis tell us that a zaken should not marry a ktana. An old man should not marry too young of a girl, or neither should an old woman marry too young of a man. There should not be too much of an age difference, where he can basically be almost like her father or grandfather. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why now. It's just suffice to say that the rabbis very, very much discourage it. They pretty much say that one should marry within his generation. What's that? 15 years within his generation. Up to 15 years, more or less, makes sense. Ideally, 2-3 years, of course. If you're from Iran, 10, 15 years is okay too. That's what I hear, right? Especially if she finds out that the man has money, she doesn't mind if it's 20 years either. Why? Because he's going to take care of her. That's what they want, the Iranian women. The man should take care of me. Love, that's number 2. Anyway, my father-in-law was 22 years older than my mother-in-law. He was a Holocaust survivor, and they met in Israel. He could have been her father. And they had a beautiful life and 5 nice girls. How do we explain that? My explanation is just my explanation is quite normal, quite basic. He's a Holocaust survivor. Maybe he's real zivug. Was sent to Auschwitz, Birkenau, Dachau. He was lucky. He survived. Not too many survived. Anybody that lived in Poland or Lithuania had Gehenom for 5 to 6 years. The Hungarian and Romanian Jews only had 1.5 years to experience the Holocaust. More of them survived. Polish Jewry, 3 million Jews were in Poland before the war started. Not too many remained. Not too many survived. It's possible that one zivug, if you came from that area, and you lived during this terrible gezerah, terrible decree, where a lot of people were sent to the camps and did not return, the one lost his soulmate. It was a gezerah. What should we do? What does Hashem do? Hashem doesn't sit back and do nothing. He sets you up, what do we say, with the best possible match at a given time. And that's how it worked out, that they were so many years apart and they didn't mind. It's possible, but that's not the usual. How about the boy being older than the girl? That's the norm. Can she be older than the boy? It's possible, but that's not the norm. If you want to know what the norm is that the boy is always older than the girl. His neshama comes down before the girl's neshama, and that's why he's older. It could be almost the same age. It could be a little older. It could be a lot older. For the girl to be older, it's possible, as long as it's within reason, a year. Not more. It's not recommended. Now, if the man is already in his late 30s, early 40s, he's losing his hair, he's desperate, okay, he could marry somebody older than him. I hope she can still have children. Right? That's the only thing. But there's no opposition to it if they can get along. But that's not the norm. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how you actually know. So you're ready to go out and to meet the zivug. How are you going to know? The Chazon Ish used to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu megalgel hakol lefi ha'adam. All zivugim come about according to the individual. What does that mean? By Hasidim, Hashem knows that the Hasidim don't date a lot. So he puts it into the parent's mind. You think of that girl, you think of that boy, we'll put them together. They're going to meet once for half an hour, and if they like and they smile at each other, that's it. We drink l'chaim. Yeah, that's how it happens today by Hasidim. Sometimes 2 pgishot, 2 days, tops, maximum. To go out and to eat, and to have a drink in a hotel, never heard of. So Hashem megalgel, He makes the zivugim happen in this circle, in this way, this fashion. Then there's another circle. The circle where people want to feel something. They want to be attracted. It's okay, it's permissible. Rabbis tell us, Asul Adam, shekadesh isha ad shirena. You cannot marry a woman until you actually see her. You have to be sure that she looks presentable to you, you know. You don't want to make ta'ut, you don't want a mistake. So some men want to feel. They want to feel, they want to be attracted. So the Chazon Ish says, all those who are looking for feelings, they should know Hashem has put them together. The feelings are sachakol shlichim. The feelings that you will have or she will have will only be the messengers. It would be the medium, the imtsa'i. That's not what's really driving the shidduch, the zivug. Hashem is putting the two together, but He knows that you want to feel something called chemistry, in quotes. Right? So Hashem says, you know what? You're going to feel it. When you will feel it, you will know it. He makes it happen, but He uses the method of what is acceptable to us. And if feelings are acceptable, if that's what's important to you, you're going to feel something. However, the problem with feelings is that they're misleading sometimes. They don't always tell the whole picture. Feelings? Could you know everything just by feelings? No way. They're misleading and they don't tell the whole picture. So therefore, it's always important to investigate, to find out, to ask, right? And to seek advice of others. Perhaps somebody else will be more objective than we are. So feelings alone is not enough to be able to know with certainty if he or she is the right person. What about physical attraction? Physical attraction, there's a problem with physical attraction, is that sometimes you don't have it right away. Sometimes you're physically attracted after 10 dates, after 2 years you're married to her. Or if you're not physically attracted after you're married, but you know, hopefully you are a little bit. But physical attraction takes some time. So even though you're looking for it, you may not get it right away. So how are you going to make up your mind? You're going to need 25 dates until you're physically attracted? The rabbis do tell us, however, that if you are repelled, in Mishnah Slida, as we call it in Hebrew, repelled, especially if you're the woman, break it off immediately. Because if there's something you very, very much do not like about this man, you're going to always not like it when you're married. And you don't want to marry someone that there's something that always bothers you about him, about his looks. Especially the women. The man says, there's something I don't like. Men don't look so much. You know, they don't pay attention. They're always busy and focus on other things. So they can live with it. But for the woman who wants her husband to look nice and handsome, if there's something that she very much is repelled by, that should be enough for her to break off the shidduch. What about outside appearances in general? You know, you're looking for a certain girl, a certain boy that has a certain height, a certain look. You have to be careful with that. Outside appearances are also misleading. Right? They can be misleading. Besides that, they can be misleading. People make a big mistake in looking at outside appearance. When you're buying a car, what's the most important thing for you when you buy a car? That it's safe. Perhaps that it doesn't consume a lot of gas, right? That it's drives well, right? That's what you basically are looking for. That it's comfortable. That's reasonable. What if somebody tells you, I'm looking for a car, this color, this style? Yeah? That's all that's important to me. Does that make any sense to you? What if it doesn't drive? Would you still buy it? But some people are actually looking at the color and the style instead of looking at if it really is safe, if it's really comfortable, and if it really drives. There's a nice mashal that I saw somewhere about a little boy who went with his mother to the shoe store. And he got very excited about certain shoes. The color, the design. And he convinced his mother to buy it. Comes home, and after a couple hours of wearing them, it's pinching him in the right toe, on the left toe, and this and this. And after a while, he's in pain. He can't walk no more. That's what happens with some shidduchim. They look at the color, at the style, at the height, at this. They get married, and after a while, it pinches me here, and she pinches me there. And it's pinching all over the place. It's not comfortable. You can't look at the color. You can't look at the outside appearance. If she's skinny now, she may get fat later. What are you going to say then? Right? Wrinkles. So outside appearances is not that important. What is important? The Rebbe of Belz used to say that basically three things are the most important in looking for your soulmate, in looking to get married. And that is good family, that the girl, the boy comes from a good family, that he and she have Yirat Shamayim, the fear of heaven, and that they're healthy. These are the three basic, the bare minimum. It's okay to look for other things too, but this is the most important, the bare minimum. Now, besides these three things, rabbis tell us to investigate if the man or the woman, the girl or the boy, have good midot, good character, good nature. Why? Because if there's something that you're going to have to give up, levater, it should never be midot, good character. If you have to give up money, if you have to give up looks, that's possible to give it up, but never give up on midot. So that's something that you should never compromise on. Character and nature, you should not compromise. Of all the characteristics that one should be looking for, which one do you think is the most important one? Well, Avraham Avinu looked for chesed. Now, rabbis tell us that the Jewish nation, by Shanim, Rahmanim, Gomle Chasadim, we're endowed with three traits that we have inherited from our forefathers. We are bashful, by Shanim. Rahmanim, we're compassionate. And with Gomle Chasadim, we're generous and kind-hearted. And the rabbis go on to say that if any Jew or Jewess is lacking in its entirety one of these midot, mutar lachshod, you're allowed to suspect that perhaps there is non-Jewish blood mixed into that family, something not kosher. It is not possible for somebody who belongs to the Jewish people that should be lacking in its entirety. There are some people who are not as compassionate, there are some people who are not as kind, but to be lacking completely in any one of these midot, something is wrong with that family. Something is wrong with that individual. Of all three, chesed is very important. Why is chesed very important? So I spoke about it in the past. The reason why chesed has always been emphasized in shidduchim, that a girl or that a boy is kind-hearted, is generous, is for three most important reasons. Anybody who has chesed, who is kind, the chesed will be a springboard, a keresh kfitza, a springboard towards Yirat Shamayim, which means that even he or she is a balat teshuvah, and is not as strong in Yirat Shamayim spiritually, but the fact that she or he has chesed, that's a springboard. If she is so kind to human beings, she will have no problem doing the will of Hashem. Chesed is a tremendous attribute, tremendous beautiful characteristic that helps one become more Yerei Shamayim. Chesed is also transferred in the genes. Man, woman, husband, wife, if they have chesed, it goes over in the genes to the children. And chesed is such an important midah that even if problems arise in the future and there is lachatzim and pressures between the couple, if one or the two of them have chesed, they'll be able litapek, they'll be able to withstand the pressures, they will be able to deal with them and control themselves because they have chesed. So chesed will be a lifesaver in the future if problems ever arise. That is why it's one of the midot that is very, very much emphasized. The question is, how do you see if somebody's kind? People are putting up a show when they date. Anybody have a suggestion? How do you test someone? Well, follow Eliezer's lead. Eliezer tested Rivka. How did Eliezer test Rivka? I'm thirsty. Can you give me some water to drink? And she says, I will give you, and I will give your camels, and I will give you all the servants that are with you. This young little girl. What's the big deal? How do we see chesed from that? He asked her a favor, and she said yes. Is that proof that she's barat chesed? A lot of people want to look good. Somebody asks you for directions. Can you tell me how do I get to Pico? Are you going to say, no, I don't want to help you? You say, yes. And if you're really nice, you could even show him the way. You're not going to walk all the way to Pico, but you'll show it. So Bal Chesed is not seen in areas or in instructions that are easily done, easily carried out. And it's not seen necessarily when somebody asks you to do a favor. It is seen in the very, very small little details. You know what Rivka could have thought when Eliezer asked her? Here's this man who's a lot older than me, stronger than me. How dare he ask me to give him water? Let him take himself. And that I should feed him. And I should drink and give to drink the camels. Why doesn't he do it? Why doesn't he get all the help? He has a lot of help with him. She could have thought all sorts of ideas. Why did he ask me? But perhaps instead she thought maybe he's tired. Maybe he's weak from the derech, from the long way. He was able to see the small details. She did it on her own. She did it not in front of her family, where she would want to show off. She did it outside in the field. And she volunteered on her own to give to drink everyone else. She wasn't asked by him to give everyone else too. He's seeing in the small details. Rabbis tell us, before Hashem raises somebody to great heights, he checks him out in the smallest details. Who did he check? David and Moshe Rabbeinu. They were both very, very good in being shepherds, and you will be my shepherd. The Midrash tells an incredible story about Moshe Rabbeinu, how when he was shepherding the sheep of his father-in-law, one sheep ran away. And he went to look for it and to catch it. And finally he catches up to it and he sees the sheep drinking water from a pool. And Moshe Rabbeinu tells himself, I didn't realize, sheep, that you were so thirsty. And he took the sheep back, carrying it on his shoulders. And Hashem says, you were so kind and so sensitive to a sheep. You're the one that's best fit to lead my people. He did something that he did not have to do. He put the sheep on his shoulders. He said, I didn't realize that you were thirsty. These are the kind of things that are small details that demonstrate chesed. I'll give you another example. Let's say somebody comes to your home asking for tzedakah. I'm marrying off a daughter. Very typical story these days. Coming from Eretz Israel, asking for tzedakah. If you give him tzedakah, is that chesed? No, not necessarily. Why? Because you give tzedakah, you give ma'aser, you feel obligated to give. You know what chesed is? Please come in. You must be tired. Would you like to drink something? You're sitting down, you give him a drink, and you give him encouraging words. I know you're having a hard time. It's not easy. I'm sure people make fun of you. I'm sure the drivers don't know what they're doing when they take you to the... also, you give him encouraging words. You help him out. You give him another name, another reference. You don't have to do all of that. That's chesed. What you don't have to do is where you can really see what chesed is. And that's why these things are very important, but are not always noticeable. It has to be the right situation in a date for these things to come up, and they don't always come up. Therefore, you have to ask. You have to do your homework. Okay, as far as hatama, when it comes to going out on a date, ideally, you want something that matches up with you in background, if possible. Isfahani with Isfahani, right? They don't go with just anybody, right? As much as possible, you want to match up those with similar backgrounds. Everybody who knows about Ashkenazim knows that the Polish and the Hungarians don't get along too well. They're very, very different. Very, very different. Nevertheless, there have been some marriages. I guess they must have been from a border town. That's the only explanation I have. Yeah. But anyway, as much as possible, people should be from the same background, if possible. It just makes sense. You're going to eat the same food your mother made you, more or less approximately. Isn't that nice? Similar background, if possible. Similar values, similar hashkafot, the outlook, the right ideas about life, similar arachim, values, similar ambitions. All of that is important. Similar education, If somebody's very religious and somebody's very secular, it won't go. Even if she promises, I'm going to be religious. The only time that can work is if you see him or her on the road to becoming more religious. They're serious. They attend classes. If she or he tells you, I promise you, I'm going to do this and I'm going to keep that, don't buy it. But these promises are worthless. Don't believe it. You have to see sincere intention. Then, even though she or he is very different from you in the education, in the observance, but there's potential. They're serious. You have to see that before you engage, before you become engaged, before you propose. Don't take their word for it. Investigation is very important. Looking into a family, looking to who are her brothers here. Maybe her brothers are mafia. Yeah, and rabbis tell us many of one's children will resemble the wife's brothers. You want your kids to be mafia? Yeah. You don't want that. Now, that's not always the deciding factor. If everything is perfect about her, just that she has a brother who's an avarian, who's a criminal, rabbis tell us you have to overlook that fact. You're going to have to overlook that fact because it's not 100% for sure that your children are going to be like that avarian. Rivka and Yitzchak got married. They had 2 kids. One was Esav, and one was Yaakov, right? So what can you do? You can't have all the kids come out the best always. You hope and you pray, and prayer helps a lot, that the children, of course, should get beautiful, good neshamot. But there's no guarantee. You cannot base the entire shidduch just on that factor. But it's important still to ask. And when you ask, you can't ask relatives. You can't ask the closest friends, because what do you think they're going to tell you? Only good things. You have to ask people in the community. And if nobody has anything negative to say, that's a good thing. So now that we have more or less some ideas of what to look for, how do we make the decision? When do we know if to propose? Similar values, everything feels good, you are attracted, there's good chemistry, right? Are you ready? Are you ready to propose? If it's a true zivug, it is the best possible hat'amah. You will feel very good, very comfortable. Usually you will not have any major doubts. Major doubts. You may have, if you're picky, of course, you may say, well, I would have wanted her to be 1 inch taller. That's shtuyot, that's nonsense. We're talking about how you feel, the overall picture. The overall picture, you feel is great. The best zivug is when the 2 pieces fit like a puzzle. Everything just makes sense. What else? The neshama also feels. The neshama is very sensitive if something is wrong. They call it in English it's called a hunch. Have you heard of that? She or he just has a hunch, a feeling that this is not right. In the Gemara's language, it's called mazla hazye. His mazal saw something. He did not see, he cannot explain what it is, but his mazal, mazla hazya. His mazal saw or sensed or felt something, and he doesn't know what it is. It's a hunch, it's a feeling that this is not right. The neshama ultimately guides us. If somebody has a major opposition, as long as the opposition is reasonable, then it's okay for him to discontinue the date. This may not be it. It has to be a reasonable opposition. Reasonable. What's not a reasonable opposition? The boy doesn't have money. How is he going to support me? That's not completely reasonable. That is a lack of bitachon in Hashem. As long as everything else is right, you cannot blame lack of parnasah. Now, if there's other things wrong with it, he lives in a faraway country and I don't want to move there. He doesn't even know what he wants to do yet. And I don't really feel 100% that the chemistry is there. Plus, he doesn't have a parnasah. Okay, that's already something else. But if everything is perfect, same values, similar background, you feel attracted, now you find out, well, how is he going to support me? That should not be a worry. Hashem supports everybody. As long as he's interested in working, he's capable, he's healthy, he'll find a job. What's the big deal? People have supported themselves throughout history. Somebody may have a lot of money and lose everything later. What good is that then? So you can't just drop everything just because of a lack of parnasah. The whole thing just makes sense. If there's an opposition, it has to be reasonable. You're dating, and you've dated 5-6 times now. If it's the real zivug, it's always going to get better with every date. There's always going to be progress. If the dates don't get any better, you don't feel any better, any more comfortable, then just drop it. Don't mislead the person. And that's another very important point. You have to be very clear to him or her that I don't think this is going anywhere. I don't think we're for each other. Don't mislead him or her. Yes, it has potential. I think it's okay. I don't see anything wrong. And you deep down have already made up your mind you don't want it. Then don't lead him on. It's not fair. Many people have their hopes high, especially men. They have their hopes high and then they're let down. It's not nice. If you have made up your mind, you feel deep down that this is not it, then don't go out for a second, third date. Unless there's a lot of good things going for you. There's just some doubts you have about certain criteria. Then okay, you might need a second or third date. But if you know for sure that this doesn't look like it, tell him, you know what, I've made up my mind. Or tell the shatchan. That's the advantage of using a shatchan. You don't have to tell the guy directly to his face. You don't have to be so tactful. How am I going to say it? How am I going to break the news to him or her?
Send an email.
Yeah, send an email. That's you know what, that's a good idea. Yeah. You're right. You know, when you're right, you don't have to say it. Yeah, but you should still add a happy face to it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to get to that. Yeah. What if you notice that things are getting better, plus he or she is better than all the previous dates you've had? That's a good sign. So you have similar backgrounds, you have good chemistry, you don't have any major opposition to him or her. It's getting better, and this is better than all the other dates I've had, or most of them. These are all very powerful signs that you're on the right road. Hashva'ah, as we say in Hebrew. It's okay for you to compare. And usually, if it's the right zivug, she or he will be much better, if not the best, of all the dates you've ever had. It may not be perfect, I told you, 100%, but it will be better than just about all the other ones that you had before. Another important idea that most people forget in dating is that it has to be mutual. Before you propose, it better be mutual. She and he have to both feel alike. A lot of times what happens is that he is ready and she's not, she's ready and he's not. It could be that this is not it. You have to reach a point where pretty much you know it's mutual. But wait a minute, how could you know if it's mutual? Amongst the religious, you don't demonstrate feelings. You can't say, I like you, or I feel very, very strong, have strong feelings for you. You don't use these words. Amongst the religious, we're very, very modest and careful on what words we use. Because even though you may feel good, you don't really have all those strong feelings until later on in life. That's why, again, it's better to use another person to tell them how strong you feel about them and how much you like them. And so therefore, it has to be mutual. Both feel more or less the same. That's a good sign. If somebody likes the midot in another person, he likes the nature of the other person, that love, the love for the other person's personality, will last forever. If one likes the other's midot, if that is what he focuses on, I like her or his midot, his nature, his character, that love is always going to be there, as long as that character is always there. To love somebody because of his looks or because of something else, it could be ahava shetluya b'davar, as rabbis tell us. It's very subtle, very much dependent on something which is physical. It won't last. But if it's ahava shelot tluya b'davar, if it's a true love that is based on his midot, his character, his nature, that is a love that can last forever. So to like somebody because of their character and personality is something very special. It's more of a reliable indicator. Okay. So let's say you found the right match. Everything is perfect. You're ready to propose. Engagement is done. And right before the chuppah, you found out that he's a cripple. You found out that he has some problem. You found out that there's some issue that is very, very disturbing, that will make it very difficult to live with him or her. What do you do now? There was such a story with a young man who was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, tremendous intelligent man, the son of a Mishpacha Miyuchesed, of Rabbanim and Admorim, of great Tzaddikim. And his name was suggested to a young girl who was also good-natured, good character, from a good family. And everything pretty much appeared to be fine. And they both agreed. She saw him, he saw her, more or less. They felt very good about each other. And they already set up a date for marriage. In the meantime, the girl heard rumors. And you know, rumors are very dangerous. You have to investigate it, but she was very, very saddened when she heard the rumor that this man had a problem. And the problem was either that he was a little bit of a hunchback, right? Or some other problem, some debility, physical debility. And she just told her parents, you know what, I'm breaking it off, if it's true. And they allowed her to take a look. She saw it, and she ran out. She didn't notice it before, and everybody was very, very saddened, upset at her, because this was a good zivug despite all. On the other hand, they understood her, and they couldn't convince her, no matter what, to marry this young man. And this is right before the chuppah. It's terrible when things are broken up so late. If you're going to break up, the earlier the better. So what do you do now? Nobody can convince her. Forget it, don't worry. Everything else is perfect. Everything else made sense. The man is older than the girl, not younger. The man is a Talmid Chacham, similar values, similar families, similar background. He's nice looking, he's intelligent. Talmid Chacham. Parnassah, there won't be a problem. Just that he has some physical problem. And it wasn't a major problem either. Obviously, if it's a major problem, you can't expect, somebody to sacrifice. It was some, but it was noticeable. So the Hatan himself says, you know what, allow me to speak to her in private. Wow. Fine, you want to speak to her in private? Okay. They spoke in private, and after 15 minutes, she agreed. They went to the chuppah. What happened? He wasn't a smooth talker. No. He didn't in any way hide what he had. So what was it? This is a big tzaddik. This is the son of tzaddikim. You know what he told her? He says, before our neshamot came down to this world, I saw that you were going to come down with that physical debility. And how you were going to have such a difficult time getting married because of that. I said to Hashem, I want to take it. Give it to me and not to her. Let me have it. Somehow, I'll get married. I'll be able to get along. That is what he told her, what he revealed to her. I think he also revealed to her that they were going to be zocheh to have very special children together. Neshamot gvoot. As soon as she heard that, and somehow she was convinced by him because he was an honest man, she went ahead and got married. Now the reason I'm sharing with you this story is because this is an exception. Not too many zivugim where there's some major problem materializes. With tzaddikim, everything was possible. And I wanted you to know this because it is sometimes possible that something is very, very not right, but everything else is perfect. It could still be the right zivug. So you have to be careful not to oppose just anything. It has to make sense. It has to be reasonable. It just can't just be something that is not so significant, like looks, money, and so forth. Okay, many of you probably are thinking, I always speak about mazalot, astrology, and other things, and how to figure. Why don't you check the signs to see if the two people are for each other? Yeah, I didn't speak about that tonight. It is true that there are other ways to know if two people are compatible for each other, and that is checking their mazalot, checking the names according to the Kabbalah. There are other ways. The rabbis remind us several things. First of all, Tamim tiyem Hashem Elokecha. You have to trust in Hashem. as much as we know, we don't know everything. The mazalot can be perfect, but maybe this is not the zivug. This could be the zivug, and the mazalot are not the best, and it's still the zivug. Obviously, if the mazalot don't add up, and the names don't add up, and you don't have great chemistry either, then you should know by yourself that this is not it. But you have to be careful not to put too much trust in all these other methods, because they don't always tell you everything, and we don't know everything there is to know about mazalot. Especially if Hashem had this in mind anyway, despite all the incompatibilities. Just want to finish up with a couple more points. If somebody ever gets engaged, be very, very careful not to break up the erusin, not to break up the engagement. It's very serious. There's a 50-50 chance, first of all, that this is the real soulmate. And it's breaking up because of nonsense, because of money issues, because of... They only want a DJ. They don't want a real singer. Okay. Oh, let's break it up. Be surprised these things happen, especially in certain communities. Yeah. Be careful not to break up an engagement for just anything. If an engagement is broken, or you've been dating somebody for a long, long time, you've gotten very close, and it appears like you're getting engaged, ask mechila, ask for forgiveness for having broken it, because sometimes women have been known to have difficult pregnancies because they were very, very close to getting engaged to someone else, because they broke it off, and then other young man never forgave her. And it could cause problems. If you break up with somebody that he was very close, almost by engagement or engaged, always ask for mechila, forgiveness from the two sides. A lot of people go through many tzarot, many difficulties, sometimes finding their zivug. Sometimes it doesn't happen so quickly, so smoothly. But in the end, it happens. The fact that it takes long or it's hard does not mean that they're not finding the right one, that they won't find it. It is possible that they have to go through some tikkunim. They have to go through a little over 80 dates with 80 different people until they find the right one. It's possible. Chafetz Chaim, nevertheless, said something very important. That if somebody is older in age, and older usually means in his late 30s, early 40s, 50s, and he's not gotten married yet, he's really old, then he's like an etrog before the holiday. When we're looking for etrogim before Chag HaSukkot, we have 2 weeks' time, then we look for the most beautiful, nicest, kasher etrog possible. We're even willing to spend a lot of money for it. As you get closer to the Chag, to the holiday, en kvar yoter etrogim mehudarim. You don't have so many more special, without blemishes, nice-looking etrogim. Lochim ma sheyesh. That's what he said. You take whatever is available. You may have to settle for whatever is available if you reach that age and you still want to get married. You should want to get married. But you have to realize the reality is that once one becomes much older, he can still find a beautiful, great woman that will be compatible and will be a good mother to his children. She will be the one that's designated to him from above if he behaved himself. But it may not be the one that he always wanted with all the ma'alot and all the virtues. This is what you have. You're right before the holiday. You're getting older. Ze ma sheyesh, kach et ze. That's what you have to take. One requires tremendous amount of bitachon. One has to have a lot of bitachon in Hashem, that the neshama will eventually lead us to the right one. Don't hesitate too much. If everything looks right, everything makes sense, there's a good chance that this is the right one. We've covered, more or less, Baruch Hashem, some of the feelings or ideas that one should have in convincing him that he or she has met the soulmate. How about people who are already married? How do you know if you married the right one? There's basically 3 indications. Would you marry her again? If you were able to do it all over again? If the answer is in the affirmative, then there's a good chance that she's your soulmate. Second condition is that you have a normal, decent life with him or her. Normal, decent life, you get along. That's an indication. And the third indication is that it's very noticeable that you both complement each other. What she is lacking, you have. What he is lacking, you have. And you complement each other. That's more or less an indication for those who are married. For those who are still struggling, I want to remind you, as I've done in the past, that tefillah is the most powerful tools of all that we have. Eliezer Eved Abraham, the servant of Abraham, the rabbis tell us, the Torah documents it. Terem kila ledaber, before he was even able to finish his conversation, his prayer, his request to Hashem, before he even finished, in Rivka was already coming out. This is an important, valuable lesson from Eliezer, the value and the power of prayer. That if one is sincere, if one behaves himself, does everything right, and is not unreasonable in what he's looking for, B'ezrat Hashem, he will meet up with the right one. Thank you very much.